Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. The numbers on the financial report blurred before my eyes as I stared at them for what felt like the 100th time. I rubbed my temples, willing away the headache that threatened to bloom. The San Francisco skyline stretched out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, a constant reminder of how far I'd come. My phone buzzed, jolting me from my concentration. Liam's name flashed on the screen. I picked up, grateful for the distraction. "Liam, what's up?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "Oliver, I don't know how to tell you this." Liam's voice crackled through the speaker, tense and hesitant. I sat up straight, suddenly alert. "What is it? What's wrong?" "It's Emily," he said, his words careful and measured. "I saw her at the Pacific Crest Hotel. She wasn't alone." My grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean, she wasn't alone? Who was she with?" There was a pause, and I could almost hear Liam steeling himself. "She was with Mark Reynolds." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Mark Reynolds, the man I'd fired for harassment. The man who'd nearly cost me everything with his unethical behavior. And now he was with my wife? "Are you sure?" I demanded, my voice low and controlled despite the rage building inside me. "Positive," Liam replied. "I saw them go in together. They looked close." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "How long ago was this?" "About an hour ago." I debated whether to tell you, but you're my friend, Oliver. You deserve to know. "You did the right thing," I said, my mind already racing with possibilities. "Thank you, Liam." "What are you going to do?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I stood up, grabbing my jacket from the back of my chair. "I'm going to find out the truth." "Oliver, be careful. Don't do anything rash." "I won't," I assured him, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. "I'll call you later." I ended the call and strode out of my office, nodding curtly to my assistant as I passed. "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day," I told her, not waiting for a response. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall, trying to process what I just learned. Emily, my wife of 10 years, the woman I'd built my life with, was at a hotel with another man. And not just any man, but Mark Reynolds, a snake who'd nearly brought down my company with his actions. As I walked through the lobby, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Emily, "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." The lie stung more than I expected. I typed out a quick reply, "Okay, take care." My hands shook as I got into my car. I gripped the steering wheel, took a deep breath, and pulled out onto the busy San Francisco streets. The Pacific Crest Hotel wasn't far, but every minute felt like an eternity. As I drove, memories of Emily and I flooded my mind. Our first date, our wedding day, the nights we'd spent planning our future together. Had it all been a lie? How long had this been going on? I pulled into the hotel parking lot, finding a spot with a clear view of the entrance. And then I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, hoping against hope that Liam had been mistaken. But as the minutes ticked by, a cold certainty settled over me. I knew, deep in my gut, that what Liam had said was true. The only question now was what I was going to do about it. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out my old digital camera. It wasn't much, but it would do for recording evidence if I needed it. Then I settled in to wait, my eyes never leaving the hotel entrance. An hour passed, feeling like an eternity. Just as I was beginning to wonder if they'd somehow slipped past me, I saw them. Emily, her blonde hair catching the late afternoon sun, and beside her, Mark Reynolds, his hand resting on the small of her back. My breath caught in my throat as I watched them, laughing and talking intimately. I raised the camera, my hands steady despite the turmoil inside me, and began to record. Through the lens, I saw Emily reach up and straighten Mark's tie, her fingers lingering on his chest. He leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her throw her head back in laughter. It was a scene I'd witnessed 100 times before, but always with me in Mark's place. The familiarity of it, twisted into this betrayal, made my stomach churn. I lowered the camera, having seen enough. For a moment, I sat there, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, hurt, betrayal, and beneath it all, a cold, hard resolve. I got out of the car, my movements deliberate and controlled. As I approached them, I saw the exact moment Emily spotted me. Her eyes widened in shock, then quickly narrowed, her expression hardening into something I'd never seen before. "Oliver," she said, her voice cool and collected. "What are you doing here?" I looked between her and Mark, noting how they'd stepped apart, but not nearly far enough. "I think I should be asking you that question, Emily." Mark had the decency to look uncomfortable, but there was a hint of defiance in his eyes. "Oliver, this isn't what it looks like." I let out a harsh laugh. "Really? Because it looks like my wife is having an affair with the man I fired for sexual harassment. Please, enlighten me on what it actually is." Emily's face flushed with anger. "Don't be dramatic, Oliver. We're just friends." "Friends?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you call it? Do all your friends get hotel rooms in the middle of the day?" "You're jumping to conclusions," Emily snapped. "But then again, that's always been your problem, hasn't it? You never could see past your own assumptions." Her words stung, but I refused to let it show. "I think I'm seeing things pretty clearly right now. How long has this been going on, Emily? Was it before or after I fired him?" Mark stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Look, Oliver, we didn't mean for this to happen. It just—" "Shut up," I growled, turning my glare on him. "You don't get to speak. You're lucky I don't knock you out right here." Emily moved between us, her eyes flashing with anger. "Don't you dare threaten him, Oliver. This isn't his fault." "No?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Then whose fault is it, Emily? Because from where I'm standing, you both look pretty guilty." She straightened up, meeting my gaze head-on. "You want to know whose fault it is? It's yours, Oliver. You and your constant obsession with work, your emotional unavailability, your inability to see anyone's needs but your own." Her words hit me like physical blows, each one calculated to hurt. But beneath the pain, a cold anger was building. "So that justifies this?" I gestured between them. "My shortcomings as a husband give you the right to betray our marriage vows?" Emily's laugh was bitter. "Marriage vows? Please. Our marriage has been over for a long time, Oliver. You were just too blind to see it." I stepped back, suddenly feeling very tired. "If that's how you feel, then don't bother coming home. I'll have your things sent to wherever you're staying." For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Emily's eyes. "Oliver, wait." But I was already turning away. I looked at Mark, who had been watching our exchange with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "And you," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "you're going to regret this. Both of you will." I walked away, ignoring Emily's calls behind me. As I got into my car, I could see them in the rearview mirror, Emily gesticulating wildly as she spoke to Mark. I didn't care what she was saying. All I cared about was getting as far away from them as possible. The drive home was a blur. My mind raced with memories of Emily and I, happy moments now tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she told me? As I pulled into the driveway of my house, the view of the San Francisco Bay did nothing to calm the storm inside me. I sat in the car for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. Finally, I made my way inside. The silence of the empty house hit me like a physical force. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. I walked straight to the bar in the living room and poured myself a generous measure of scotch. The amber liquid burned as it went down, but I welcomed the sensation. Anything to dull the pain of betrayal. As I stood there, staring out at the bay, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Liam. "How did it go? Are you okay?" I typed out a quick reply. "You were right. It's over. I'll call you tomorrow." I turned off my phone, not wanting to deal with anyone else right now. Instead, I made my way to my home office, scotch in hand. Sitting down at my desk, I opened my laptop and pulled up the security footage from the day I fired Mark. There he was, cornering Rachel in the break room, his body language aggressive and intimidating. I had been furious then, but now, seeing him with Emily, my anger reached new heights. He hadn't just disrespected my company and my employees, he disrespected my marriage. "You'll pay for this, Mark," I muttered. closing the laptop. Both of you will. I reached for the phone on my desk, dialing a number I knew by heart. Charlotte Hayes speaking, came the crisp, professional voice of my lawyer. Charlotte, it's Oliver Grant. I need your help. It's about my marriage and a prenup. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I see, Charlotte said, her voice softening slightly. I'm sorry, Oliver. What happened? I took a deep breath, steeling myself to say the words out loud. Emily's been having an affair. With Mark Reynolds. Mark Reynolds? Charlotte's voice sharpened. The same Mark Reynolds you fired for harassment? The very same, I confirmed, taking another sip of scotch. I see, Charlotte said again, and I could hear the rustle of papers in the background. Well, given the circumstances and considering the prenuptial agreement you and Emily signed, this actually works in your favor, Oliver. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a glimmer of satisfaction for the first time since Liam's call. How so? The infidelity clause, Charlotte explained. It stipulates that in the event of adultery, the faithful spouse retains the majority of the assets. Given that you have proof of Emily's affair, she won't be entitled to much in the divorce settlement. Good, I said, my voice hard. She doesn't deserve a penny. Oliver, Charlotte's voice was gentle but firm. I know you're hurting right now, but we need to approach this logically. I'll start preparing the paperwork. In the meantime, don't confront Emily again. Don't give her any ammunition to use against you. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Understood. Thanks, Charlotte. I'll be in touch. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of purpose cutting through the pain and anger. Emily and Mark thought they could betray me and get away with it. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I pulled up the CCTV footage of Mark harassing Rachel again, an idea forming in my mind. This wasn't just about my divorce anymore. This was about justice, about making sure Mark paid for his actions, both past and present. I picked up the phone again, this time dialing Rachel's number. It was time to set my plan in motion. As the phone rang, I steeled myself for what was to come. The betrayal had cut deep, but I wasn't going to let it destroy me. Instead, I would use it as fuel, driving me forward in my quest for revenge. Emily and Mark had no idea what was coming, but they would soon find out that crossing Oliver Grant was the biggest mistake of their lives. The morning after my confrontation with Emily and Mark, I woke up with a pounding headache and a burning desire for revenge. I made my way to the kitchen, brewing a strong cup of coffee to clear my head. As I sipped the bitter liquid, I pulled out my phone and dialed Rachel Brooks' number. It rang several times before she picked up. Hello? Her voice was hesitant. Rachel, it's Oliver Grant. Do you have a moment to talk? There was a pause. Mr. Grant? Is everything okay? I took a deep breath. Not really, Rachel. I need to discuss something important with you. It's about Mark Reynolds. I heard her sharp intake of breath. What about him? I know what he did to you, Rachel. I have the CCTV footage from that day. I want to help you press charges against him. I don't know, Mr. Grant. I've tried to put that behind me. I understand, Rachel, but Mark hasn't changed. He's still hurting people. Don't you think it's time he faced consequences for his actions? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Rachel spoke. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Grant? I'll cover all the legal fees. You won't have to worry about a thing. I'll be there to support you every step of the way. Why are you doing this now? Rachel asked, her voice laced with suspicion. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. Mark's been having an affair with my wife. I want him to pay for everything he's done. Oh. Rachel's voice was soft. I'm sorry, Mr. Grant. Thank you, Rachel. Will you consider my offer? Another pause. Can I think about it? This is a lot to process. Of course. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here to help. After ending the call with Rachel, I turned my attention to Emily's financial dealings. I needed someone discreet and thorough to dig into her affairs. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Marcus Fisher, a private investigator I'd used for corporate matters in the past. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered. Fisher speaking. Marcus, it's Oliver Grant. I have a job for you. Mr. Grant, always a pleasure. What can I do for you? I need you to look into my wife's financial dealings, specifically any recent investments or large transfers of money. Marcus's voice turned serious. That's a delicate matter, Mr. Grant. May I ask why? She's been unfaithful, Marcus. I need to know what I'm dealing with before I proceed with a divorce. I see. I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Grant. I'll start right away. How deep do you want me to dig? As deep as you can, Marcus. Leave no stone unturned. Understood. I'll report back as soon as I have something substantial. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place. Mark and Emily thought they could betray me without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. I've thought about it. I want to press charges. When can we meet? A smile spread across my face as I typed my reply. How about lunch today? I'll send you the details. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of phone calls and emails. I was laying the groundwork for my revenge, careful not to let my emotions cloud my judgment. At noon, I met Rachel at a quiet restaurant near my office. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her napkin as I sat down. Thank you for meeting me, Rachel, I said, trying to put her at ease. She nodded, her eyes darting around the restaurant. Are you sure about this, Mr. Grant? It's been a long time since it happened. I'm sure, Rachel. What Mark did was wrong, and he needs to face the consequences. Are you ready to tell me exactly what happened that day? Rachel took a deep breath, then began to speak. As she recounted the details of Mark's harassment, I felt my anger rising again. By the time she finished, my hands were clenched into fists under the table. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Rachel, but I promise you, we're going to make this right. She looked at me, a mixture of fear and determination in her eyes. What's the next step? I'll contact my lawyer. We'll set up a meeting to go over your statement and the evidence. Are you comfortable with that? Rachel nodded slowly. I think so. Mr. Grant, thank you for believing me, for doing this. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand reassuringly. You're welcome, Rachel. We're in this together now. As I left the restaurant, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Mark Reynolds was going to pay for his actions, both past and present. And Emily, well, she would soon learn the cost of her betrayal. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Found something interesting. Can we meet? I smiled. The game was on. The next morning, I met Marcus at a discreet coffee shop downtown. He slid into the booth across from me, a thick folder in his hands. Mr. Grant, he nodded, his voice low. I've got some interesting findings about your wife's financial activities. I leaned forward, eager to hear what he discovered. What did you find, Marcus? He opened the folder, revealing a stack of documents. Mrs. Grant has been funneling a significant amount of money into a real estate venture in Napa Valley. It's a high-end condominium project, but from what I can tell, it's on shaky ground. How much are we talking about? I asked, my mind already racing with possibilities. Marcus slid a document across the table. Nearly all of her personal savings, plus a substantial loan. She's got everything riding on this project. I couldn't help but smile. This was exactly the kind of information I needed. Excellent work, Marcus. I need you to dig deeper. Find out who the primary investor is. I want to know everything about this project. Marcus nodded, jotting down notes. Consider it done, Mr. Grant. Anything else? Yes, I said, pulling out my phone. I need you to deliver this footage to Mark Reynolds' current employer. I sent him the video file of Mark harassing Rachel. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's some pretty damning evidence, Mr. Grant. Are you sure about this? I met his gaze steadily. Absolutely. It's time Mark faced the consequences of his actions. After Marcus left, I headed to my office. I had a meeting with Charlotte and Rachel to prepare for the legal proceedings against Mark. Charlotte was already in my office when I arrived, going over some paperwork. She looked up as I entered. Oliver, good morning. Are you ready for this? I nodded, setting my briefcase down. More than ready, Charlotte. Is Rachel here yet? As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. My assistant poked her head in. Mr. Grant, Ms. Brooks is here. Send her in, please, I said, standing to greet Rachel. Rachel entered, looking nervous but determined. I gestured for her to take a seat. Rachel, this is Charlotte Hayes, my lawyer. She'll be handling your case. Charlotte smiled warmly at Rachel. It's nice to meet you, Ms. Brooks. I understand this is a difficult situation, but I want you to know that we're here to support you every step of the way. Rachel nodded, her voice quiet but steady. Thank you. I'm ready to do this. We spent the next few hours going over Rachel's statement and the evidence. Charlotte was thorough, making sure we had every detail documented. As we wrapped up, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. It's done. Video delivered to Reynolds' employer. I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. Good news, I said to Charlotte and Rachel. The evidence has been delivered to Mark's current employer. Rachel's eyes widened. What do you think will happen? Charlotte leaned forward, her voice reassuring. Based on the strength of the evidence, it's likely Mark will face immediate termination. This will also strengthen our case in court. Rachel nodded, a mix of relief and anxiety on her face. I can't believe this is really happening. I placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You're doing the right thing, Rachel. Mark needs to be held accountable. As Rachel left, Charlotte turned to me, her expression serious. Oliver, I have to ask, is this just about justice for Rachel, or is there more to it? I met her gaze steadily. Mark betrayed me, Charlotte. He and Emily, they deserve what's coming to them. Charlotte sighed. I understand you're hurt, Oliver, but be careful. Don't let your desire for revenge cloud your judgment. I nodded, but in my heart, I knew it was too late for caution. Mark and Emily had made their choices. Now they would face the consequences. Over the next few weeks, events unfolded rapidly. Mark was indeed fired from his job, the scandal making headlines in the local business community. The day of the court hearing arrived. I sat beside Rachel, offering silent support as she testified about Mark's harassment. When it was my turn to take the stand, I spoke clearly and confidently, corroborating Rachel's story with the CCTV evidence. Mark's lawyer tried to paint it as a misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. When the judge announced the verdict, finding Mark guilty and imposing severe legal penalties, I felt a surge of satisfaction. As we left the courthouse, Rachel turned to me, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Grant. I couldn't have done this without you. I squeezed her hand gently. You did this, Rachel. You stood up for yourself. I'm proud of you. As Rachel walked away, I saw Mark being led out in handcuffs. Our eyes met, and I saw the moment he realized the full extent of what had happened. His face paled, and for a moment, I thought he might be sick. I approached him, my voice low so only he could hear. I warned you that you'd regret this, Mark. This is just the beginning. Mark's eyes widened in fear, but before he could respond, the officers led him away. I watched him go, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. One down, one to go. Emily was next. With Mark dealt with, I turned my full attention to Emily. Marcus had come through with the information about her real estate venture, including the name of the primary investor, Gregory Stevens. I did my research on Gregory, learning about his business interests and his reputation in the industry. Then, I made the call. Gregory Stevens speaking, a gruff voice answered. Mr. Stevens, this is Oliver Grant. I believe you're involved in a real estate project with my wife, Emily Grant. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That's correct, Mr. Grant. Is there a problem? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. I'm afraid there is, Mr. Stevens. I have some information about Emily that I think you should be aware of before you proceed any further with this investment. I'm listening, Gregory said, his voice cautious. Emily has been engaging in some questionable behavior recently. She's been unfaithful in our marriage, showing a lack of judgment that I believe extends to her business dealings as well. I could almost hear Gregory's frown through the phone. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Grant. What evidence do you have of this? I have photographic evidence of her infidelity, Mr. Stevens. But more importantly, I have concerns about her business acumen. Has she shared with you the full financial projections for this project? There was a long pause. She provided some projections, yes? Are you suggesting they're inaccurate? I'm suggesting that Emily might not have the experience or the judgment to handle a project of this magnitude. I've been reviewing her financial records, and I have serious concerns about the viability of this venture. Gregory's voice hardened. Mr. Grant, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I'll need to look into this further. Of course, Mr. Stevens. I just felt it was my duty to inform you. I wouldn't want to see a respected businessman like yourself caught up in a potentially disastrous venture. After ending the call, I sat back in my chair, a mixture of guilt and satisfaction swirling in my gut. I knew what I was doing would devastate Emily, but the memory of her betrayal steeled my resolve. Days passed, and I waited for the other shoe to drop. It came in the form of a furious phone call from Emily. "What have you done?" she screamed as soon as I picked up. "Hello to you too, Emily," I said calmly. "What seems to be the problem?" "Don't play dumb with me, Oliver." Gregory Stevens pulled out of the project. He said he had concerns about my judgment and the viability of the venture. "What did you say to him?" I paused, considering my words carefully. "I simply told him the truth, Emily, that you've shown poor judgment in your personal life, and that it might extend to your business dealings as well." "You bastard," Emily hissed. "You've ruined everything. How could you do this to me?" "How could I?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How could you betray our marriage, Emily? Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. When Emily spoke again, her voice was cold. "You'll regret this, Oliver. I swear you will." "I don't think so, Emily. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." I hung up, my heart pounding. I knew this wasn't over, but for now, I'd won. Emily's project was in ruins, her reputation tarnished. She was feeling just a fraction of the pain she caused me. As I sat there, staring out at the San Francisco skyline, I couldn't help but wonder what the cost of my revenge would be. But it was too late to turn back now. I'd set this in motion, and I would see it through to the end. My phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte. Emily's lawyer reached out. "They want to discuss terms of the divorce. Are you ready for this?" I typed out a quick reply. "More than ready. Set it up." The final confrontation was coming. It was time to end this once and for all. The morning air was crisp as I walked into my office. I knew Emily would be coming today. Charlotte had informed me that Emily's lawyer had reached out, demanding a meeting. I was ready for this final confrontation. As I settled at my desk, my assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Mr. Grant, Emily is here to see you." I took a deep breath. "Send her in." The door burst open, and Emily stormed in, her face a mask of fury. "You bastard! How dare you?" I leaned back in my chair, maintaining a calm facade. "Good morning to you too, Emily. Please, have a seat." She remained standing, her hands clenched at her sides. "Don't play games with me, Oliver. I know what you did. You sabotaged my project." I met her gaze steadily. "I merely informed Mr. Stevens of some concerns I had about the project's viability. If that led to him withdrawing his funding, well, perhaps your business plan wasn't as solid as you thought." Emily slammed her hands on my desk. "Cut the crap, Oliver. You deliberately ruined me." "Why? Because I hurt your precious ego?" I stood up slowly, my voice low and controlled. "No, Emily. Because you betrayed our marriage. Because you chose to throw away 10 years of partnership for a fling with a man who has no respect for women or ethics." "Don't you dare judge me," Emily hissed. "You were never there. Always working, always focused on your precious company. What was I supposed to do?" I shook my head. "You could have talked to me. You could have asked for a divorce. Instead, you chose to lie and cheat." Emily laughed bitterly. "Oh, please. As if you would have listened. You never listened." "I'm listening now," I said quietly. "So tell me, Emily, was it worth it? Was destroying our marriage worth a few moments of excitement with Mark?" She faltered for a moment, her anger giving way to something that looked almost like regret. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold fury. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can just ruin my life and walk away?" I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "No, Emily, I don't think I've won. I think we've both lost. But it's time to end this." I slid the folder across the desk to her. She opened it, her eyes widening as she saw the contents. "Divorce papers? You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," I replied. You'll find that the terms are quite generous, considering the circumstances. The prenuptial agreement ensures I retain most of our assets, but I'm willing to provide you with a settlement that will allow you to start over. Emily's hands shook as she flipped through the papers. This is nothing compared to what I should be entitled to. I leaned forward. It's more than you deserve, given your infidelity and the money you've lost on your failed venture. My lawyer assures me that if we take this to court, you'll likely end up with far less. She stared at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disbelief. How can you do this to me, Oliver? After everything we've been through? How could you do what you did to me, Emily? I countered. Actions have consequences. It's time you faced yours. Emily sank into the chair, suddenly looking defeated. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. I felt a twinge of sympathy, quickly suppressed. But it did, and now we have to deal with the fallout. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. What happens now? I sat back down, my voice softening slightly. You sign the papers. We go our separate ways. You get a fresh start, and I move on with my life. Emily wiped her eyes, her voice bitter. Just like that? 10 years of marriage, over? I shook my head. It was over the moment you decided to betray our vows, Emily. This is just making it official. She stared at the papers for a long moment, then reached for a pen. I suppose I don't have much choice, do I? There's always a choice, I said quietly. This is the consequence of yours. Emily signed the papers with a shaky hand, then stood up. I hope you're happy, Oliver. I hope destroying me brings you the satisfaction you're looking for. As she reached the door, I called out, Emily. She paused, not turning around. I'm sorry it came to this. Truly. She let out a short, humorless laugh. No, you're not. But thanks for saying it anyway. With that, she was gone, leaving me alone with the signed divorce papers and a hollow feeling in my chest. I picked up my phone and dialed Charlotte's number. It's done, I said when she answered. Emily signed the papers. Good, Charlotte replied. I'll file them right away. The court should process them quickly, given the circumstances. Are you okay, Oliver? I sighed. I'm fine. It needed to be done. All right. I'll keep you updated on the proceedings. Take care of yourself, Oliver. As I hung up, I stared out the window at the San Francisco skyline. The life I had known was over. It was time to figure out what came next. Months passed, and the divorce was finalized without much fanfare. I threw myself into my work, expanding my business empire with a ferocity that surprised even me. New ventures, emerging technologies, anything that could keep my mind occupied and push me forward. One afternoon, as I was reviewing plans for a new tech startup I was considering investing in, my phone rang. It was my sister, Jessica. Ollie, she said when I picked up, please tell me you're not working on a Saturday. I glanced at the clock, surprised to see it was indeed the weekend. I lost track of time, I guess. Jessica sighed. That's it. I'm coming over. You need to get out of that office and remember what sunlight looks like. Before I could protest, she had hung up. An hour later, she was at my door, practically dragging me out of the house. We ended up at a small cafe in the park, the sun warming my face as we sat at an outdoor table. So, Jessica said, stirring her latte, how are you really doing, Ollie? I shrugged. I'm fine. Business is booming. We're looking at expanding into AI and machine learning. Jessica reached across the table, squeezing my hand. That's not what I asked, and you know it. How are you doing? I sighed, finally meeting her eyes. I don't know, Jess. Some days I feel like I'm on top of the world. Other days you wonder if it was all worth it, she finished for me. I nodded. Something like that. Jessica leaned back, studying me. You know, it's okay to admit that you're hurting, Ollie. What Emily did, it would break anyone. I'm not broken, I said, perhaps too quickly. No, you're not, Jessica agreed. But you're not whole either. Not yet. But you will be. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching people pass by in the park. You know, Jessica said eventually, there's more to life than work, Ollie. When was the last time you did something just for fun? I thought about it and realized I couldn't remember. I'm not sure. Jessica grinned. Well, that settles it. We're going to start having weekly sibling outings. No work talk allowed. I couldn't help but smile. That sounds nice, actually. Good, she said, standing up. Because our first outing starts now. Come on, there's a new art exhibit I want to check out. As we walked through the park, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about work, or Emily, or revenge. I was just enjoying the moment with my sister. Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking forward to these outings with Jessica. We explored new restaurants, went hiking in Muirwoods, even tried our hand at a pottery class with hilariously disastrous results. During one of our coffee meetups, Jessica brought up an idea. You know, Ollie, you've learned a lot from this whole experience. Have you ever thought about mentoring young entrepreneurs? I raised an eyebrow. Mentoring? I'm not sure I'm cut out for that, Jess. She rolled her eyes. Please, you've built a successful business empire from the ground up. You've weathered personal and professional storms. You have insights that could really help people just starting out. I mulled it over. I suppose I could give it a try. But where would I even start? Jessica's eyes lit up. Leave that to me. I have a friend who runs a startup incubator. I'll put you in touch. True to her word, Jessica connected me with her friend, and before I knew it, I was scheduled to give a talk to a group of young entrepreneurs. Standing in front of the eager faces, I felt a nervousness I hadn't experienced in years. But as I began to speak, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt a new kind of energy. Success isn't just about making money, I told them. It's about building something meaningful, something that can withstand the storms life throws at you. And believe me, there will be storms. After the talk, a young woman approached me. Mr. Grant? I just wanted to say thank you. Your story, it really inspired me. I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. I'm glad I could help. What's your startup idea? As she excitedly explained her concept for a sustainable fashion app, I found myself genuinely interested, offering suggestions and asking questions. That night, as I drove home, I realized I felt more alive than I had in months. The thrill of helping these young entrepreneurs, of passing on what I'd learned. It was a different kind of satisfaction than what I got from my revenge. I picked up my phone and called Jessica. Hey Jess, I think you were right about the mentoring thing. I want to do more of it. I could hear the smile in her voice as she replied, I knew you would love it, Ollie. See? There's life after divorce after all. As I hung up, I looked out at the San Francisco skyline from my living room window. For the first time since Emily's betrayal, I felt a sense of true contentment. I had survived the storm and come out stronger on the other side. The past few months had been a whirlwind of new experiences and perspectives. My weekly outings with Jessica had rekindled my zest for life outside of work. The mentoring sessions with young entrepreneurs had given me a new sense of purpose. One evening, as I was preparing for another mentoring session, my phone rang. It was Charlotte. Oliver, she said, her voice cautious. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, I replied. What's up, Charlotte? There was a pause before she continued. I thought you should know. Emily reached out to me. I felt a tightness in my chest. Oh, what did she want? She asked if you would be willing to meet with her. She says she wants to apologize. I sat down heavily in my chair. I see. And what do you think I should do? Charlotte sighed. Honestly, Oliver, I think you should hear her out. Not for her sake, but for yours. It might give you the closure you need. I mulled it over for a moment. You might be right. Okay, tell her I'll meet her, but on my terms. The next day, I found myself sitting in a quiet corner of a cafe, waiting for Emily. When she walked in, I was struck by how different she looked. Gone was the polished businesswoman I had known. She seemed humbled. Oliver, she said softly as she sat down. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. You wanted to talk. So talk. Emily took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. For everything. What I did, it was unforgivable. I see that now. Why now? I asked, my voice level. It's been months, Emily. She looked down at her hands. I've had a lot of time to think, to really understand the consequences of my actions. Not just on you, but on myself. I lost everything, Oliver. My marriage, my career, my self-respect. I felt a mix of emotions hearing her words. Part of me wanted to lash out, to hurt her as she had hurt me. But another part felt a strange sense of peace. I appreciate your apology, Emily, I said finally. But you're right. What you did was unforgivable. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I know. I don't expect forgiveness, Oliver. I needed you to know that I understand now. And I'm truly sorry. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. What will you do now? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Emily gave a small, sad smile. I'm starting over. New city, new job. It's not much, but it's a chance to rebuild. I nodded. I hope it works out for you, Emily. I really do. As we stood to leave, Emily hesitated. Oliver, for what it's worth, I'm glad to see you're doing well. You deserve happiness. I watched her walk away, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. The anger and bitterness that had driven me for so long. It wasn't gone entirely, but it had lessened, making room for something new. That night, as I prepared for my next mentoring session, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the revenge, the rebuilding. I had lost a lot, but I had gained something too. A new perspective, a new purpose. As I stood in front of the group of young entrepreneurs, I felt a surge of energy. Today, I began. I want to talk to you about resilience, about facing adversity and coming out stronger on the other side. Because in business and in life, it's not about avoiding storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain. The room was silent, all eyes on me as I shared my story. Not just the successes, but the failures too. The betrayals, the setbacks, and most importantly, the lessons learned. As I wrapped up, a young man raised his hand. Mr. Grant, after everything you've been through, do you have any regrets? I paused, considering the question carefully. Regrets? No. Every experience, good or bad, has shaped me into who I am today. Do I wish some things had happened differently? Of course. But I don't regret the actions I took or the lessons I learned. After the session, as I drove home, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the journey. I picked up my phone and called Jessica. Hey Jess, how about we try that new sushi place for our next outing? As I hung up, I smiled to myself. Life goes on, and so would I. Stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.